Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for our national anthem, performed today by Melissa Gialdini of San Jose.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you.
You may be seated. Would you join me as you're seated? Shh. That didn't mean you may be talking, that meant you may be seated. Will you join me in thanking our wait staff here at the Santa Clara Convention Center? And as you enjoy your lunch, along with your food, we want to give you some food for thought. So again, we're going to ask each of you to take your seats as we have an amazing program today. We want to thank and recognize our elected leaders that are here with us today, starting with a reminder of a quote by our founder, the founder of Hewlett-Packard, David Packard. Shh. Thank you. Thank you for being so gracious, for coming for our extended hour of networking beforehand so that we could connect today together. As our founder, David Packard, said, the betterment of society is not a job to be left to a few. It's a responsibility to be shared by us all. And as we thank and recognize our elected leaders with us today, we can never forget that our democracy was created for all of us to be engaged. I'm going to ask our 125 public officials with us today to please stand and stay standing for a moment. Would you please stand? And now, everyone else in the room, will you stand with them for a moment to underscore that we are best when we stand together, public and private sector. And you can thank me later because by standing, you just burned off 2 calories. Please be seated. We'd also like to express our gratitude for our branded sponsors who made today financially possible. And we are going to do so with our famous, soon-to-be patented one-clap method, showing our appreciation. Let's start with our co-title and presenting sponsors, Alaska Airlines, Western Digital, Bank of America, Kaiser Permanente, Sandhill Properties, and our networking and roundtable sponsors, Silicon Valley Bank, SKS, eBay, Infosys, Lyft, ServiceNow, Vue, and Waymo. And finally, a special and enthusiastic clap for our pillar and media sponsors. We're keeping it on the screen there for a moment. And an even more one enthusiastic clap for our coveted table and half-table sponsors. We obviously have many important leaders in this room today, but no one is more important than the two young men I'm about to introduce center stage. Christophe LaBelle and Stephen Tu are our timekeepers for today. And that keeps our speakers on time and the rest of you on time. So this is how they're going to help. When a speaker has 1 minute left, they will hold up this sign, and you will note as you turn it around that it tells the speaker how much time she or he has, but lets the audience know and the speaker know that the audience knows how much time he or she has. And then with 30 seconds left, and then when time is up, and for those truly enthusiastic speakers who may need a gentle reminder, the let it go sign. Christophe, Stephen, thank you. Now, every year, our 300-member companies meticulously plan visionary goals to bring value and support to the communities in which we do business, in which our employees and families live, and that we call home. And that's why this year we are going in depth on issues facing our communities as part of our ongoing on-stage community conversations. 4 of those today in rapid-fire succession, giving us insight on how our efforts impact the communities in which we live and work. Our first community conversation, and they're going to set the bar really high, is with the mayor of Oakland, the 8th largest city in California, moderated by Lonnie Mahanta, Vice President of Public Policy at Lyft. As we welcome both of them to the stage, notice we're going to have fun throughout the day with a current photo of each speaker and a more youthful photo of each speaker. Please welcome Mayor Libby Schaaf and Lonnie Mahanta.
Great to have you here.
Glad we got you the picture. I had to dig.
Have fun.
Hello.
Well, this is very exciting. I'm also glad I didn't realize how big this was going to be before I got here, but I'm excited to be speaking with you, Mayor Schaaf. So we have a couple questions for you here today. So Oakland is the 8th largest city in California and one of its most diverse. Would love to hear from you. What are your top 3 priorities for the city and for the residents?
All right, well, first is safety, and I think every mayor has to worry about public safety. And I am pleased to report that Oakland has had a nationally recognized huge reduction in gun violence. And so let's give it up for that. We literally have cut gun violence by more than half over the last 5 years. 5 consecutive years of reductions, national recognition, very exciting. Second priority has got to be security. And I talk about housing security, economic security, and cultural security. Oakland is going through a lot of changes right now. It's very destabilizing for a lot of our long-term and vulnerable residents. And I want to see investment. I want to see prosperity. I want to see revitalization. But I want to make sure that those things help the people who have been here all along. And then the third thing is vibrant and sustainable infrastructure. I know I'm in a room of people that actually think infrastructure is sexy. Let's keep thinking that, it's important. And then I'm gonna sneak in a fourth one, and that is trustworthy, responsible government. I think people, for some good reasons maybe, are starting to question the ethics of government. And I think it's really important at the local level that we allow you to keep the faith.
So you're a mayor, of course, but you're also a key leader in this region. I would love to hear from you what you think are some of the greatest challenges this region as a whole is facing.
All right, Bay Area, if you do not know the answer to this, please wake up, because it is housing, housing, housing. I hear a little clap over there. That must be a housing developer. And housing is not only threatening the prosperity of our incredible Bay Area, we are seeing the symptoms of it. And one thing I hope you think about, I know the Silicon Valley Leadership Group is doing a lot of incredible work around transportation. But think about transportation woes as a symptom of our failure to plan adequately for housing, as opposed to a problem by itself. If we wanted to solve our commute problems, we could do it faster and cheaper by just building affordable housing near jobs. These mega commutes, oh good, got some housing advocates out there. These mega commutes are really unhealthy for our families and for our planet. So please, our homelessness crisis, our affordability crisis, these all really, I think, are caused by our failure to plan and to provide adequate, affordable housing.
So you have deep roots in Oakland. You were born and raised there. Your family, you come from a working class background with your dad who was a traveling shoe salesman and your mom who was a stewardess. You were deeply involved in the Girl Scouts, which you talk about as fostering a deep sense of public service. So I would just love to hear from you. What do you think are the kind of foundational things that brings public service into your life?
Well, two things. Anybody who knows me knows that I am deeply, passionately in love with Oakland. And for me, Oakland is not just a place, it's not just my hometown, it stands for values. It has always stood for inclusive diversity, for kind of a working class ethic, for a celebration of artists and creative energy, innovation. And then finally, progressive politics. You know, we are feisty, we protest, and we push for a better world. And then the second thing I would say about public service is it really nurtured in me two qualities that I like to talk about. I don't know if anybody else has ever had the horrific experience of being a graduation speaker, especially at your former high school. It's actually, it's really a pressure cooker, but I like to tell young people that while ambition is important, that I think the keys to success are curiosity and kindness. And my experience as a Girl Scout, doing public service in my community really brought out those characteristics.
So you've devoted your life, personal and professional, to public service and your engagement in your community. So I know this is a little bit like asking you to pick your favorite child, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What's the proudest professional accomplishment in your life?
Well, I'm not embarrassed to admit I have a favorite child. Not at home, trust me, I have a favorite son and a favorite daughter, so I'm good there. But the Oakland Promise is without question my favorite accomplishment as mayor. I can tell you that the children of Oakland, California are the most incredibly talented, gifted, hardworking, resilient human beings that have so much to contribute to your businesses, to this region. But if we do not empower them with the education that they need to actually unleash those skills in today's economy, we are not only failing them, we are failing ourselves. And so the Oakland Promise really has been recognized as the nation's most ambitious Cradle to Career Initiative, literally starting with giving babies born into poverty a $500 college savings account and financial coaching for their parents, all the way through giving early scholarships to every single kindergartner in the whole city, coaching and access supports for our middle schoolers and high schoolers so they can be on track to college, and then finally, multi-year scholarships and personal mentors. And in just 3 years, the Oakland Promise has 1,400 scholars in college right now. I'm very proud of that.
All right, we're going to go into the lightning round here. First one. What's your favorite book?
I don't have a favorite book because I love all books. I'm a voracious reader, although it's mostly fiction. I like sci-fi, I like fantasy. I have read all of the Game of Thrones books.
Me too.
But my most recent favorite book is a very sobering book called There by Tommy Orange. It takes place in Oakland. It talks about the Native experience in the urban context. Heartbreaking, beautiful, read it.
Okay. In one sentence, what's the most courageous thing you've ever done?
Well, you tell me, but I would say giving birth to 2 children with no drugs.
Last one. What's a word or a thought that you live by?
I love the Margaret Mead quote, never let it be said that a small group of committed individuals cannot change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
Please join me in thanking Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf and Lyft Vice President Lonnie Mahanta. We're going to let them rejoin you and enjoy their lunch. Outstanding. Thank you for being so inspiring. Our founder, David Packard, once said, "Take risks, ask big questions. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you are not reaching far enough." So we invited Ann O'Leary, Chief of Staff to Governor Gavin Newsom, for her thoughts on leadership, management, and issues that keep her awake at night. To interview Ann O'Leary, we have Allison Koo, the Managing Director of Sandhill Properties. Join me in thanking Ann and Allison.
Hi, Ann. I'm so happy to be here with you today. So you serve as Chief of Staff to California Governor Gavin Newsom's office, and your office manages a state with the 5th largest economy in the world. I imagine that you guys face a lot of issues on a daily basis right now with everything that's going on, and on top of that, you're trying to push a very proactive agenda. Can you share with us a little bit about what a typical day for you looks like and how that influences your management style?
Great. Thanks so much, Allison, and thank you to Carl and all of you for having me here today. I think there's no typical day when you're in the governor's office. One thing that is typical is it usually involves crisis management, and it involves trying to look forward. So I think I'll just take today, for example. So today we have fire burning in Sonoma. We've got one burning in Los Angeles, and one just started that's quite bad in San Diego. And so I started my day by having a briefing from the Cal Fire Chief to make sure that I had an assessment of what was happening around the state so that we could guide the governor. We have a team in the governor's office who are at our Office of Emergency Services, our operations center. They've been staffed up 24 hours dealing with both the fires as well as the public safety power shutoff. So when there's a crisis happening, it's very intense. It's a 24-hour job. But in addition to that, we have everything that we're doing on our proactive agenda, making sure that whether it's budget season or legislation or our executive actions, that we're moving forward on affordability and opportunity, on the Justice for All agenda that we have, on the economic development agenda. So we really are always working on that as well and making sure that that stays on the schedule. So those are the kind of 2 big parts of my job.
I don't even know how you stay standing, but so I know that you were also born and raised in the beautiful state of Maine, hopefully eating a lot of lobsters, to a mom who was a social worker and a father who was a union organizer. I'm curious how those experiences help shape your perspective and worldview.
Well, I think when you grow up in a small town, whether it's in California or Maine or anywhere in between, you really do get a sense of what daily life is like. And my mom, was dealing with families who are very low-income families who were having crises, and my dad was the head of the AFL-CIO in the state of Maine. And so and it was at a time in which there were major strikes happening in the paper industry. So I, grew up on strike lines with my dad and hearing my mom's stories. And so I think you develop a lot of empathy for what it looks like when the economy isn't working in small towns and what it means for families when that's happening. And so I think I've carried that with me my whole life into all the work that I do.
That's great. I know that you've had the opportunity to work for both President Bill Clinton as well as Secretary Hillary Clinton. You actually was her senior policy advisor for the 2016 presidential campaign and served also as the co-executive director for the Clinton-Kaine transition effort. We all probably went into that night thinking something different was going to happen. Curious if you could share more on that night and what were the key lessons that you took away from that experience?
Well, I think the key lesson certainly should be never take anything for granted. I didn't have a plan B. I don't think our country had a plan B. And so I had actually moved temporarily to Washington. I was heading up Hillary's transition team, so that means trying to pick her cabinet, making sure that her policy agenda was ready to turn into the agenda that would be the White House agenda. And so on the night of, I actually was really struggling with whether I should go up to the victory party or stay because we were moving our transition team, we thought, from 50 people to 1,000 people the next day to really stand up the government. I would say that in the 2 to 3 weeks before the election, there was a tremendous amount of noise happening, meaning that even my personal email was hacked, my cell phone was routinely being hacked, I was getting voicemails because my cell phone was released publicly, my number was released publicly. It was clear that we knew that there was some type of interference. We didn't have our pinpoint on it. We thought it was Russian interference. We didn't have all of it, but it was a really complicated time. The evening started with a feeling of joy that we'd made it and that we were going to do it. As the evening progressed, it became more and more clear that it wasn't going well. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, it hadn't yet been called, and John Podesta, who was the chair of the campaign and the chair of the transition, had told me that if the election was kind of a tie in the Bush v. Gore sense, that I should go back to D.C. and make sure to open the transition office so that we could fight it out. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, my friend said, "You've got to get on a train to D.C. You better get ready to open the transition office." So by the time I got to Penn Station at 3 a.m., the election had been conceded and there was no transition office to open, and it was a really sobering time. I think that in terms of the predictions that Hillary had for what might happen and our campaign had in terms of the disruption and the hatred that would come out of this White House, we were very prescient. I think if you look back and see what we said, but people weren't listening, and I don't think we had the right message, I think, for people to hear us. So it was really alarming, sad, and I think it continued to be alarming and sad every day that we've woken up in the Trump White House, to be honest.
Well, we're so happy that you're still continuing the service. So I know that you earned your bachelor's at Mount Holyoke College, and afterwards you came out to Silicon Valley to get your master's of Master's of Education Policy at Stanford, and then your law degree at Bolt at Berkeley. What, besides these great institutions, attracted you to the Bay Area initially, and how has it been different after you have moved back from DC now?
I think when I was growing up in Maine, I had never been to California. I'd never been on an airplane until I was in high school. I come from a very moderate to lower middle income family. And it seems so far away. In fact, I now laugh because in my high school yearbook, I wrote that the thing I wanted to do when I grew up was to be the mayor of San Francisco. And it was because it was so laughable and so far away. I'd never been there. It seemed like this exotic place. It is an exotic place. And so when I was working in young and working in the White House for President Bill Clinton, I had a mentor named Cheryl Mills who had gone to Stanford Law School. And so Cheryl said, I was volunteering at night helping kids in high school in DC, tutoring them, and I really got very interested in education. And so Cheryl encouraged me to go to Stanford. I thought it would be a one-year master's, and I'd come back, and life took me on a journey that I didn't expect. And so I've been in California for about 17 years now, and it's been great.
We're happy to have you here.
I live in Oakland, Mayor Schaaf, and it's fabulous. And I commute to Sacramento where I have an apartment, but Oakland's my home.
So, as we all know here, we're in a pretty serious crisis in relation to housing right now. Probably 3 decades in the making, but something that's absolutely crippling families and communities in this region and throughout the state. We're probably all very happy and applauded Governor Newsom when he put out the goal to try to achieve 3.5 million units of new housing in the next 5 years to combat this shortage. But clearly that takes a lot of different parties involved, from builders and developers, investors, to state and local officials. How do you see the governor's office in that equation?
You know, I would say that the biggest issues on our agenda are really about affordability and opportunity. You can't live anywhere in California without realizing that the cost crisis is so real. And so we put $1.75 billion into our budget on affordable housing, but we have so far to go. If you look at the Bay Area alone, we're actually 49th out of 50 in terms of housing production. In the state of California, 77,000 houses were produced last year, which was 8,000 less than the year before. Every 4.5 jobs that come to California, only 1 house. And so we just have a tremendous amount more to do, and it's going to be collaborative work that we have to do together.
So we have a little bit of time left. I wanted to end with a lightning round question. Who other than a family member has had the most positive impact on you?
I've been lucky that Hillary Clinton really has been a mentor to me for 20 years and probably have had a tremendous impact in my life.
Wow. 5 words that best describe you.
I think I'm kind, resilient, empathetic, a leader, a team captain.
Favorite movie of all time?
Stand By Me, based on a Stephen King novel about friendship and the value of friendship that keeps with you throughout your life.
And if you had to pick a superpower, what would it be?
Well, I think we might all pick be able to transport from one place to the other, given the transportation problems we have in California. Can I make one public service announcement before we end? I want to make sure that people understand what we're experiencing in California right now with the fires that are going on throughout the state. And I want to make sure that people understand that the public safety power shutoff that has been occurring, but we have another one that's coming up this weekend. It's a very serious wind event that people are aware of. There's a lot that businesses can do, and I really want to encourage you to do 3 things. One is I want to encourage you to work, if you have small businesses or you have vendors that are small businesses, to make sure that people are updating their websites so community members know how to access and when your hours are and whether you're closed. I want to make sure that you consider working through the Cal Chamber. They have a foundation that will be putting monies together to ensure to help communities that are impacted by the fires and the public safety shutoff. And I want to make sure that you're working in your local communities with your mayors and others to make sure that you're helping your neighbors, that you're resilient, that you're making sure that if you're a big business, that you're doing whatever you can. You may have a generator, but small businesses don't. If there's ways that you can help people in your business chain, it would be extremely helpful. If you need anything, please know that the Governor's Office of Emergency Services is open. We are working with public-private partnerships. Lenny Mendoza, who's the head of our business and economic development. Lenny, if you could stand up and wave. I think people know Lenny. He's so fabulous. Lenny is available to help, but we really need, this is not something that can be solved by public policy alone, by state leaders alone. We need public and private partnerships. So I appreciate everybody coming together. It's going to be a rough week ahead in the state of California, so thank you.
Thank you.
Ann O'Leary, Allison Koo, thank you for your service and your leadership. Our third community conversation is with State Controller Betty Yee, and our moderator is Diana Burkett Rocco, Vice President of External Relations with Alaska Airlines.
Those photos are fun.
All right, hello.
You had a tooth
Yes.
missing.
I think that was, I think that was first grade.
Nice. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Diana Burkett Rocco. I lead external relations at Alaska Airlines, and I'm delighted to be here. And Controller Yee, I'm looking forward to asking you a few questions. As the state's chief financial officer, or fiscal officer, You serve as the state's accountant and bookkeeper of all public funds. You administer the state payroll system, unclaimed property taxes, and you serve on 70 boards and commissions, including the Board of Equalization, the Franchise Tax Board, CalPERS, and CalSTRS. And you co-founded the Asian Pacific Youth Leadership Project, which we may come back to. And you just celebrated a birthday, so I think we're going to sing.
No, please don't.
I'm just kidding. Though that would be really fun. Okay, so actually, I admire really anyone who steps up and runs for public office, so thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
Can you just help us understand why the role of the state's CFO is so important to each of us as Californians?
Absolutely. So, having the great privilege of serving as the CFO, really, it's very simple. All of us who are here in California rely on our public services. We want to be sure that they're accessible when we can have them. We want to be sure our public dollars are directed to their rightful uses. And so, to be able to account for every public dollar, to have the public's faith and confidence that the government's house is in order, I think is very important. And then on an individual level, we have this great economy in California where we are currently the 5th largest economy in the world. And unfortunately, we are home to the highest effective rate of poverty among the 50 states. And I mention those two because really those are the bookends within which I do my work, because I do believe that our sustained economic health really rests with the financial health of each and every Californian.
Wonderful, thank you. So among your responsibilities, you serve on both the California Public Employees Retirement System and the board, and the California State Teachers Retirement System Board, which with a combined $620 billion under management. The CEO of CalPERS, Marcy Frost, is here as a guest with us today. So what do you see as the biggest challenges and the biggest opportunities for the nation's 2 largest public pension funds?
Sure. So when I serve on the pension funds, it really, I think, is the most acutely aware of how California is really a global economy. And so we are long-term institutional investors at both of our pension funds, which means that we have to pay close attention to all that is happening around the world that could affect, obviously, the performance of global economies. And I think one of the challenges today is really the broad instability that we're seeing around the globe. Obviously, we're reading a lot about China instability with our European partners, political strife. It could be a whole number of things. But these affect our decisions in terms of where we want to place our assets and our capital. And so I think that continues to be a challenge. Obviously, there's no crystal ball to really guide us in terms of where best to put our money. But we have a long-term view about where we place our assets to be able to then get the returns to pay the benefits to our beneficiaries. But I would say where the opportunities are is why we're a public pension fund for the long term and here in California. I believe that CalPERS and CalSTRS are going to be leaders, institutional investor leaders, in terms of how we are going to stave off the devastating impacts of climate change. And both funds are working with many other institutional investors around the world to the tune of over 250 of them with about $34 trillion of assets under management to really start to work with some of our top emitters around the world to say, really recognize climate risk in your business operations, help us develop the scenarios of how we're going to do the transition to a low-carbon economy. And more importantly, when you do this, it gives us the confidence that you really are serious about continuing to create long-term value in your company.
Thanks for that. That's financial leadership for broader social and environmental change. That's
Absolutely.
remarkable. So let's take a little turn sort of toward the personal. We were talking about stories backstage, and we see you as a young person there. So part of the dynamism and the DNA of California is the rich history of immigrant families coming together to make this economy and the culture across California work. And you're a first-generation American. You were born to parents who immigrated here from Guangdong province of China, and you were raised in San Francisco helping, working with the books in your family's neighborhood laundry and dry cleaning business. So can you talk a little bit about that? What was that like? Why did your parents come to this country? Why did they leave their home back in China? And what was it like growing up here in San Francisco?
Yeah, thank you, Diana, for the question. It's one that I really like answering because we really here in California, we so embrace our diversity here in California. And in fact, I love waking up every day and just thinking how we are so blessed to be in the state where we embrace diversity as our greatest strength and not a threat. And it is really, I think, what undergirds the strong foundation upon which our economy continues to grow and why we continue to be leaders globally. You know, I grew up in San Francisco, and really it was during a time when there were many of us my age who did not speak English before entering kindergarten. We were comprised of immigrant families from all parts of the world, from Mexico, from Europe, from China. And my parents had a laundry and dry cleaning business, and we felt so supported by the neighboring community to be successful. And in fact, I like to joke that I not only had to bring home good report cards for my parents, but for the hundreds of customers that my parents had. And so we had to work that much harder. But, you know, I didn't feel an ounce of discrimination until quite later in my life. And so my view about how we can really be a successful multicultural society was something that I've already experienced in my life, and it's something that I hope that we can return to. But it really is born out of just the respect in our differences and certainly the promise of what we can get accomplished together.
All right, so we are going to move to the lightning round.
Yikes.
One thing I just want to call out is you were the 10th woman to be, only the 10th woman to be elected statewide.
And not the
Now
last.
there
We've
are
got to do
12.
better.
Yes, we've got to do better. All right, so real quick.
Yes.
If you could invite 3 people, living or dead, to your home for a dinner party, who would they be? What meal would you personally prepare and serve them? No DoorDash. It has to be something you personally prepare.
Those who know me know that I love to cook, and I love making a full Passover Seder. And my husband is a rabbi, so this is a great tradition of ours. And so I have thought a lot about inviting Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Nelson Mandela over for dinner, where I can cook a whole Passover Seder and actually have them speak in their own voice about their journey from slavery to freedom. I think it would be awesome.
Wow. That would be wonderful. What was your favorite television series of all time?
Oh, gosh. We were just talking about this. I don't know if any of you are fans of PBS series, but there was a series that started on network TV that ended up on PBS that today just brings out many lessons about just who we are as humanity, and that is a series called I'll Fly Away. And it speaks about life in a segregated South, and unfortunately, we're still dealing with some of those challenges today in some parts of our country. But the lessons learned about how when we really have deep understanding of one another at the most individual of levels, that there really is so much promise about what our society can look like.
Wow, I will have to look that up. Okay, and what is the most courageous decision you've ever made, and how did it go?
I'm not going to say running for office because I actually, that was somewhat courageous, but I would have to say more recently.
I think that qualifies as courageous.
I think more recently deciding to become a part-time caregiver to my 96-year-old mother. It was a risk. And I want to give voice to this because it's becoming more and more common, I think, among us. She suffered a viral infection in her brain 2 years ago and needed to come home, but did not have her ability to swallow return. And so she requires 24-hour care and lives in San Francisco, and there aren't many caregivers who can afford to live in San Francisco. My sisters and I took a risk and decided we would learn how to be caregivers, and it's 24-hour care. And I have to say, we plunged into this with a lot of trepidation, a lot of fear, anxiety, and I'm happy to say that my mother's spirits couldn't be better today. It's really wonderful.
State Controller
sharing
Betty
that.
Yee and Diana Burkett Rocco, thank you so much for joining us on stage today. Our fourth and final community conversation is with San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo and Chris Lehane, who will be conducting the interview. Chris is Senior Vice President of Global Policy and Communications for Airbnb. And spoiler alert, they were law school classmates.
Carl, thank you very much. You look like you're in fine shape for the turkey trot. We look forward to seeing you out there, maybe in costume this year. Mayor, it's good to see you.
It's great to be here with you, Chris. I should note that last time I was in a race of any kind, Carl made me wear a giant carrot outfit. and run 5K, so he better wear a vegetable outfit this time.
My understanding is you have the worldwide record, though, for the 5K in the carrot suit.
In a carrot suit, that's true.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's begin. Maybe you actually gave us the answer to this first question, but at Airbnb we like to do fireside chats, and we always begin the conversation with a question about what's a fun fact about you that says something interesting about your character, your personality, your philosophy.
Okay, well, this may be a fact about both of us since we both went to law school together. There's a little pub down the street from where we went to law school known as the Bow and Arrow, at least it existed.
Never heard of it.
Yes. And every year they'd have an annual Rock'em Sock'em Robot Championship where folks would have to compete with these robots, and you win if you pop the other robot's head off. And so I was the champion 2 years in a row, and that's how I spent my law school years. Chris, I met actually, I don't know if you remember this, during our orientation, our first year, and I didn't see him for months again, and I think I saw him during finals in December, and I said, Chris, where the heck you been? And he said, well, I've been working on a campaign. And I thought, okay, that's kind of odd. And then I remember that summer, I was working some $8 an hour job at the Department of Justice. I run into Chris, and he's coming out of the White House because he had just run Bill Clinton's presidential campaign in the state of Maine. Didn't bother to mention that.
So, I thought I was supposed to be interviewing him.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that tees up the second question. Regardless of whether I had actually been in law school or not, and I saw that David Chu was here, who was also one of our classmates. Regardless of whether I was actually in class or not, Sam was a much, much better student. And I do think you've brought some of that legal thinking to a really, really, really serious issue, which is the issue of gun safety. And obviously, there was an incredible tragedy that took place, in Gilroy over the summer. But you really have done something that no other city has done, which is seeking to create a liability, a gun insurance program for those who own firearms. And I know you introduced that a couple months ago, and just really want to know what the update is, where that stands, but also want to thank you for the courage for standing up on that issue.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Thank you. Thank you. We're not there yet. We're working on it. We've had great partnership with the Giffords Law Center and Everytown and a lot of other organizations helping us work on the legal aspects of this, because as you imagine, it is complex, of course, anytime you're dealing with a constitutional right. But we expect we'll be at council in the next couple of months with a formal proposal that would have an insurance mandate for anyone owning a gun in the city. This is not my idea, by the way. It's an idea that's been proposed before in California and New York, I think after the Sandy Hook shootings. But ultimately, I think political opposition beat it down. And so we're hoping that maybe if we can get this started again in the city of San Jose, there may be other cities and states that follow.
Well, thank you for your leadership on that. And it relates at some level to the next question, which is, mayors used to historically be judged by some of the fundamentals, how the schools were, how safe the streets are, whether the garbage, right, the proverbial, is the garbage getting picked up in the morning. But in the digital age that we are in, suddenly cities are having to deal with all sorts of issues that literally can show up one morning. And I'm just curious how you think about being a mayor in a digital age in terms of the tools and resources that are available for you to be able to effectively govern.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting moment. I think particularly, I feel like I'm the luckiest mayor in the country, being mayor of San Jose in the heart of Silicon Valley when there is so much innovation happening. But as we know, the digital tools don't solve all the problems for us. We wish we had an app to solve homelessness, and we don't. And some of the areas where we desperately need innovation, frankly, we haven't seen enough of it. I think there was a McKinsey study that came out last year that looked at housing construction, where we know it's incredibly expensive, about $700,000 a unit to build an apartment in a 100-unit apartment building, and that is part of our huge challenge of this affordable housing issue. And we haven't seen any significant innovation in the construction industry in terms of labor productivity since World War II, according to McKinsey. And so we're now, just in the last couple of years, starting to see prefabricated modular housing, which is great to see, certainly. And in San Jose, we're launching a project that's referred to as co-living, which will be the largest in the country, sort of a different format that allows for shared use of some kitchen and living facilities in very small units. And we're starting to see some more innovations, but it seems to me this is the area where we need the most innovation. And I know we've been working on Airbnb on a few, with your team on a few of these ideas. I think one that's really promising for us is backyard homes. We've got a city of mostly single-family housing. That's true for most of our suburban communities in California. And if we can better utilize that land that folks may be willing to build a unit on, I think there's a lot of opportunity to tackle this affordable housing crisis. We've already seen in just the last few months since we started to loosen the rules, and we've had some help from our state delegation as well on this, we've been able to permit more ADUs or backyard homes in the last year than we saw in the last 4 years combined. And we think we can really drive that cost down now with prefabricated modular construction. So this is a great opportunity for us to get affordable housing built in partnership with a lot of homeowners.
Yeah, and it's been great just to see how you and your whole team are thinking about this, really from how can you actually disrupt for humans to benefit humans. Follow up on that, most government, whether it's federal, state, or local, is all based sort of on a spatial geographic relationship, right? Platforms, including the one like Airbnb, I mean, we're in 191 countries, 100,000 cities, but we're in San Francisco, right? How do you think about engaging with those types of platforms, just given that even from a structural perspective, city government really isn't necessarily set up to be able to, and the companies themselves are not set up to be able to necessarily engage with cities?
Yeah, there's no question that we have a long way to go in government to figure out how we can be more responsive, particularly in a world in which our residents increasingly as consumers have expectations about responsiveness that they get from the private sector, and as citizens, they don't get it from the public sector. So we've got a lot of work to do. We really pilot a lot of technologies, for example, just in streaming our city council meetings and committee meetings on Facebook Live. We've been using AI technology from Box to help folks be able to use that streaming technology. But really, the way we do it best is when companies come to us identifying a problem that we know we share. And this is a great example of what Airbnb did. After the floods, we had a really challenging problem trying to identify places for folks to go when the floods came in the midst of a housing crisis. Airbnb said, hey, we've got a great platform with lots of homeowners. Let's come up with an idea where we can help folks who are stranded be able to find a place for a few days while we're getting them settled. It was a great partnership, and I'm grateful for your work on that, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
So San Jose became a pilot, and then I know you've launched it now nationwide as a result.
Yeah.
So it's really about finding those problems together and problem solving together.
Well, thank you. As you noted, San Jose has been a model for so many programs, right? And I think it really does speak to the vision, the progressive vision that you really do bring to the city in terms of how the private sector can work with the public sector and sort of create a community sector. But last question, since we're getting the warning here, very diligent, by the way, very diligent. There's a lot of folks here who may not have worked in government, but who have to engage and work with government. And I've been on both sides. You've dealt with both sides. I think sometimes people can speak past one another, even with good intentions. So last question, one piece of advice for all of us who are in the private sector about how we can work responsibly with the public sector.
I see my time's up, so I'll make it fast. In the public sector, we're in the public trust business, and move fast and break things doesn't work in the public trust business. So we know we don't move as fast, but we do need to maintain the public trust. If you can appreciate that, then we can work together well.
That was a very fast answer, but a great answer. So thank you so much.
San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo and Chris Lehane of Airbnb, thank you so much for gracing our stage today. At the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, as Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf so adroitly noted, we have true challenges, but we know by working together we can tackle those challenges. In fact, at the Leadership Group, we call them the issues facing the Bay Area. It's an acronym, the T is traffic, H, housing and healthcare, E, education, and the final E, energy and the environment. In rapid fire order, we're going to hear, glancing back and looking forward, the responsibility we have as employers and community citizens to tackle these issues. Will you please welcome Chris Boyd, Senior Vice President of Kaiser Permanente, and Asia Plahar, Director of Quality and Risk Management for Kaiser Permanente, on that T of the transportation.
Thank you, Carl. In case you're confused, I'm Chris. The Bay Area has the second worst traffic conditions in America, with the average commuter now losing more than 100 hours every year in speed stalled below the speed limit on Bay Area roads. That's 2.5 work weeks every year. Many of the green lights achieved to date have included the efforts of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. The BART extension to Milpitas and North San Jose will open for passenger service within the next 3 months, $100 million under budget. The electrification of Caltrain, enabling an 80% growth in ridership from 65,000 weekday trips to 110,000, will be completed by April of 2022. Thank you, Jim Hartnett and Team Caltrain. The Leadership Group has successfully led 6 local and regional transportation funding campaigns, which are providing more than $30 billion to fund specific improvements throughout our region. You know, running and winning transportation ballot measures is one of our superpowers.
I'm Asia, and yet there's so much more we must accomplish. That's why since January of 2017, the Leadership Group has been partnering with the Bay Area Council and SPUR on a potential 9-county Bay Area transformative transportation initiative for the November 2020 ballot. It's called Faster Bay Area. The vision of Faster Bay Area is based on this premise. We believe that Bay Area commuters deserve a world-class, seamless, integrated transit system that much better serves the people who are transit dependent and is compelling enough to get those of us currently in our cars to transit. To learn more, please visit fasterbayarea.com. Thank you.
And again, as Mayor Schaaf pointed out, these are really issues that are the flip side of the same coin. You flip that coin, T, tails, traffic, H, housing, heads. We have to solve them together. And to talk about that, we're honored to have the Silicon Valley Market President of Bank of America, Raquel Gonzalez, and the former CEO of Brigade and still CEO of Brigade Holdings, Matt Mahan.
Good afternoon, I'm Raquel Gonzalez. No issue is more troubling than the combination of a challenge of housing and homelessness. It has been 30 years since 1989 that our state has consistently met its annual housing goals to simply keep up with the population. The Leadership Group continues to press for progress through policy, programs, and specific projects. In the past 2 decades, we have successfully advocated for more than 300 specific developments that also meet our sustainability goals. We have co-led California's last 4 statewide housing bonds in 2002, 2006, and 2008, totaling $11 billion. And we also co-created the Silicon Valley Housing Trust, so capably led by our good friend, CEO Kevin Zwick, which has raised, yes, Kevin, has raised more than $250 million in voluntary contributions, which has helped nearly 30,000 individuals and families secure affordable housing opportunities.
Good afternoon, I'm Matt Mahan, and I'm standing up here today to say that Silicon Valley, it is time that we up our game on housing. Right, Mayor Schaaf? Woo! Great Silicon Valley Leadership Group member companies such as Google, Google and Facebook have each recently pledged $1 billion for affordable housing in our region and state. Governor Newsom has boldly called for 3.5 million new homes within the next 7 years, and we need every one of those. We will continue to work with our governor and legislature to meet this goal. We will continue to link transit and housing with a goal of championing at least 150,000 new homes within 1/2 mile of fixed rail transit stops throughout the Bay Area. And we will continue to advocate to break down barriers to housing production while also fighting for the preservation of existing homes and protections for renters facing skyrocketing costs. Here's what's at stake in human terms. My wife Sylvia and I have a 2-year-old daughter named Nina and a son on the way in about 4 weeks. We love our kids, even the one we haven't met yet. We want them to be able to live in the same community in which we are raising them. Thank you.
And yet we know that people will have a better chance to succeed if they're adequately prepared for the workforce through a great education system throughout our state. To talk about the E in the, please join me in welcoming the Vice President of Government Relations and Policy for eBay, Kathy Foster, and the President and CEO of Silicon Valley Bank, Greg Becker.
Third grade reading, 8th grade math, our Silicon Valley Competitiveness Project, led by Silicon Valley Bank CEO Greg Becker and Splunk CEO Doug Merritt, underscores what's at stake. Currently, 41% of Silicon Valley third graders are not reading at above grade level. That's 4 in every 10 kids. For our Black and Hispanic students, nearly 65% are not reading at grade level. For 8th grade math, nearly 50% of our students are not proficient, and nearly 3 of every 4 of our Black and Latino students are not math proficient. We are failing a generation of kids, and they deserve better. In partnership with San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo and the San Jose Library Foundation, in just the past 18 months, 7,000 from primary school underserved communities have started and completed coding academies in all 24 San Jose public libraries. Thanks to the leadership group member companies like KLA, PwC, and Applied Materials, kids are equipped with the resources and equipment needed for these academies to happen.
Thanks, Kathy. At the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, we continue to focus on education policy and specific programs that can be brought to scale. Thanks to the leadership of Governor Newsom and our state legislature, we can finally help students by measuring what matters, by enacting a longitudinal data system to track progress of kids from kindergarten to college. We are better equipped to help kids succeed if we're better aware of what they need. At the Leadership Group, we also enhance existing efforts to expand coding academies for kids 2nd through 12th grade in cities and libraries in San Jose and other cities. We will strengthen our partnership with Reading Partners, which allows busy Silicon Valley Bank employees to tutor 1st through 5th grade students in reading for as little as 45 minutes over a 12-week period in a safe space in public schools. Our efforts with Reading Partners with Mayor Liccardo and several years ago secured 700 caring adults as tutors, and guess what? We're coming back for you to do it next time. We know one of the biggest challenges our companies face is finding talent. We also know that not every middle and upper middle class job in our companies requires a 4-year or advanced degree. We know we have many job clusters that only require a 2-year community college degree or a certified course. That's why with the Leadership Group, Silicon Valley Bank next week is going to be hosting an event up in Menlo Park to bring 70 recruiters together with community colleges to show how we can find talent in the community college system. We want your company to join us to learn how to approach hiring differently. These are just a few of the things the Leadership Group is doing to help support education. Thank you.
And that fourth and finally, energy and the environment, as the Governor's Chief of Staff talked about a little bit earlier today. We would like to ask the President of North America for VIEW, Guthrie Cox, and the Chief of Staff for Western Digital Corporation, Celeste Cooper, to come forward.
A healthy environment with reliable energy. At a time when we are experiencing increased climate impacts, such as wildfires, we know more than ever we cannot take these needs for granted. It is why our Silicon Valley Leadership Group has been proactive champion on energy, water, open space, and environmental issues since our inception in 1978. In just the past decade, we have played a statewide leadership role on cutting-edge legislation to serve our state. Through the Global Warming Solutions Act, we are setting greenhouse gas targets for the state, of which the 2020 target has already been met and exceeded. For cleaner energy and electricity, California is setting goals to run half of the electricity grid by renewable energy by 2030 and double our energy efficiency targets in that time. To lower greenhouse gas emissions, California is now committed to running our grid on non-carbon emitting power by 2045. And by successfully passing a 9-county Bay Area ballot measure AA in June of 2016, which will raise $500 million for wetlands restoration and flood protection in San Francisco Bay, in partnership with the Bay Area Council, Save the Bay, San Mateo County Supervisor Dave Pine, Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, and others. We know, with all of our ambitious goals, that we will always be more successful together.
Hi, my name is Celeste Cooper. While much has been accomplished, we still have a great deal of work to do. The sea level in the Bay Area has been rising by 8 inches over the last 100 years, and this is accelerating. Scientists predict that we are going to rise even higher to 1 to 2 feet by the year 2050. This is being caused as a result of increasing greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Our region was not developed to handle these higher sea levels. We have over 1 million homes and roughly $50 million in critical infrastructure that is at risk during the next 20 years. Just to put it in perspective, you're sitting in a flood zone right now. We applaud the leadership group for their activities and leading a coalition of institutions to help prevent and protect our region from the impacts of these rising waters. We are working to identify and create a vision that will help with the San Francisco Bay and drive issues and actions around that vision. We are also identifying areas of high risk that need to be prioritized and dealt with immediately. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group is also securing funds to drive immediate actions to address the rising waters and deal with these at a long-term basis. Climate change is an issue that's going to affect all of our businesses, no matter what type or what size. This is something that's not only going to impact our businesses, it's also impacting our employees and their families. Silicon Valley in the past has rallied around such strong issues and been able to go through shared purpose, investment, and innovation, resolve these issues. We stand ready to support the Silicon Valley Leadership Group in both creating awareness on this issue and also driving delegations both at the state and federal level to resolve and drive action. So I hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Impact. Impact requires core values. and we hope you'll see our core values in this 66-second video.
The Silicon Valley Leadership Group. For over 4 decades, more than 350 dynamic companies shaping the future innovation economy of Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, and the nation. We believe in the power of collaboration to create change, connecting business to our community, and embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. We achieve together what individuals cannot. Relying on years of experience and expertise, we engage with government at every level to find solutions that boldly tackle our region's toughest issues. We overcome obstacles, working together to make a difference, improving the quality of life for all of us, making Silicon Valley and the Bay Area a better place to live and work. Guided by founder David Packard, we believe in being bold and visionary and making a contribution to our community. We don't sit on the sidelines. We get in the game and move the ball forward. We are better together. The Silicon Valley Leadership Group, your roadmap to a better future.
At the Leadership Group, we believe that we need to be bolder to move the boulders in front of us. Here's the audience participation portion of our program. Please stand up. Quickly, please stand up. First, at the Leadership Group, we reach high with ambitious and audacious goals. Join me, reach high. And now, in a way where you are not hitting your neighbor or necessitating a workers' comp claim, we also build bridges by reaching across. Stretch, reach across. And we never forget that most people in our community and state are not nearly as blessed as the people in this room, so we reach down to lift others up. And if you are old like me, you do this very carefully when you bend down. And slowly with your back, lift others up. Please be seated. Impact, reaching high. You heard Greg Becker talk a little bit about our Community College to Career initiative. Let me put some numbers around that, because each number is a name of a real person that we can help. 19 community colleges, 360,000 Bay Area students. 78% don't look like me, not Caucasian, 54% female. Most of them have already figured out our housing crisis and have negotiated our traffic crisis. And we know across the innovation economy, high-tech, low-tech, or no-tech, that we have clusters of jobs, hundreds of thousands of them, that do not necessitate a 4-year or an advanced degree, but that could be wonderfully filled for middle and upper middle class jobs with a 2-year community college degree or a certified course. That's why, through the leadership of Dr. David Palter on our team, we are so excited about what we can accomplish together through this effort by stretching our goals and knowing that these dynamic students seeking a better future deserve a better future. That must have been my mom, who's at table 6, by the way. The second, of course, is building a bridge rather than burning bridges down. And you heard a little bit about our work through our Housing Trust Silicon Valley. Thank you, Kevin Zwick. Our advocacy on the ground, 300 endorsed sustainable, affordable home developments in just the last 2 decades. Kat Wortham and Vince Rocha lead that work, and let me just tell you what that is like and why it's important. And I'll start with why it's important. We have to be the voice for the voiceless. Because otherwise, the only people who show up at those hearings are great citizens concerned about even another single home in their communities. I'll never forget the first time I went to testify nearly 20 years ago for an affordable home development. I walked into a city council chamber of a city that I will not name. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. San Jose. And I walked into that council chamber. There were 200 folks there with stickers and buttons, all against a particular affordable home development. There were 25 people already in line, every single one opposed to that affordable home development. And as I stood in that incredibly long and increasingly loud and angry line, that wonderful civil rights quote kept going through my mind. One person armed with the truth is a majority. Yet as I stood there trying to psych myself up, another quote kept coming into my mind, and it went something kind of like this. Yeah, but one of these neighbors armed with a pitchfork and you're dead. Well, I wasn't brilliant that night, I never am, but that city council held firm and they approved that development. And it's only one example of what we can do when we're stretching out to build bridges rather than burning them down. How do I know that? 3 years later, that development was open. 250 families eager and ready to occupy them. They asked me to keynote the opening. And as I stepped off the podium, the two gentlemen, and they were, the two gentlemen who had organized all that opposition to come out and oppose that development were gracious enough to be there. And they kind of nervously ushered me over to them, and I even more nervously approached them. And they said, Carl, we just want you to know, if we had had any idea that these are the types of homes that are called affordable, and that these are the types of families that need it, we would have never been opposing you that night. Light bulb, stretch, build a bridge, reach out. The third example is, of course, taking the time to reach down and lift others up. Thanksgiving morning, 2004, my wife Leslie and I wake up, and the radio journalist is on the line saying, 20,000 people are downtown walking and running to help feed the hungry. But here's the kicker. They weren't talking about Silicon Valley or San Jose. They were talking about Sacramento and their run to feed the hungry. Leslie and I turned to each other and said, somebody ought to do that here. And we decided, well, maybe that somebody is us. As marathoners and Ironman distance triathletes, we had always been talkers and takers, showing up to other people's races and expected to be catered to. And we knew it was time to switch to be doers and donors and to help others. And thanks to the incredible vision and generosity of Applied Materials, who stepped forward as our title sponsor, 365 days later on Thanksgiving morning 2005, we had our first Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot, but with the tagline that is more important than the title: for health, hope, and a home. Because we pick beneficiaries meeting these core needs that Mayor Liccardo often speaks of. People need and deserve a decent place to live, and health care, and food on the table. Well, it was kind of fascinating because we had promised our title sponsor 1,000 people. And 9 days before race day, here's the good news, we had 300 volunteers ready to help. Here's the not so good news, we had 100 people signed up for our race. We had 3 volunteers for every runner. That is customer service. Fortunately, in the final 9 days, and then on race morning, 1,900 people showed up and allowed us. I love your applause, but you're cutting into my time. And allowed us to donate $132,000, meeting and exceeding our goals, because that's what we do in Silicon Valley when we stretch. When we stretch up, when we stretch across, when we stretch down to help others. So let me just mention this year's Turkey Trot, that little race we started in 2005. For the past 6 years in a row, it's been the largest time Thanksgiving Day run in the world. But our point is not to be the largest, it's to be the most compassionate and the most generous. And that's why this year's goal is what we call Mission 1 Million, to give to 5 fantastic nonprofits helping our most needy Bay Area families $1 million. First 14 years, we've been able to give almost $9 million. We want to do $1 million this year alone, but we need your help. We need a few more generous companies to sponsor, and we need all of you to look down at your table right now and grab that brochure and sign up. And oh, I'm not going to be here on Thanksgiving. No excuses. We have a remote runner category. We do, where we send you your bib, your race finisher medal, and the coolest shirt in the world. Okay, maybe you don't think it's the coolest, but Mayor Liccardo does. So you've earned that shirt. But let's tell you what 1 million really is, because it's not the dollar amount, it's the impact that I mentioned a few moments ago. So with Pam's help, here's that impact. For our Second Harvest Food Bank of Silicon Valley, that's 520,000 more healthy meals. For our Housing Trust Silicon Valley, that's 300 permanent, sustainable homes for our neighbors currently living in our streets and creeks. For our Health Trust, that's 3,000 wellness and education workshops for people suffering with chronic conditions. For our Healthier Kids Foundation, that's 3,100 underserved children just in San Jose alone that will have vision and dental screenings and eye screenings as well. And finally, for Second Harvest of Santa Cruz County, that's 440,000 more meals. If we pull together, if we stretch up, across, and reach down. Will we do that together? So, okay, I want to thank the 19 of you who applauded on that. But let me mention something that I think we just all have to realize. Impact, if you break that out, is I am packed, right? We all think we're so busy now, and we are. I am packed. I can't take another thing on. So let's switch the scenario a bit. Let's go from I am packed, I am, to we are. We are stronger together. We are more successful together. And at the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, we believe we are better together. Thank you for joining us. If I may, I'm going to ask our vice chair and the founder and CEO of Aura, James Gutierrez, to come out. James is going to remind us of something vitally important and end with a little bit of levity with our friends. Please come on up. Please come on up. From Alaska Airlines. James?
Thank you very much, Carl. Good afternoon, everyone. In Silicon Valley, we stand united in our diversity, whether it's the diversity of our 350 member companies, or the rich diversity of our communities, or the diversity of our world-class workforce born locally or from abroad. We know that in our diversity is our strength. The innovation economy is fueled by talented and creative leaders who are born just down the street or around the world. In fact, Silicon Valley and our country were created by those who were blessed to be born here, and also those who, through courage, conviction, and creativity, often risked everything to come here. As we keep our world connected, online or by air travel, we are fortunate to have great member companies in the aviation industry as well. One of those partners is Alaska Airlines. Ooh, Alaska Airlines, yay. Known globally for its customer service and on-time arrivals. Well, today, I'm proud to stand next to Oriana Brannon of Alaska Airlines, who is joining me for a drawing of 2 round-trip tickets, anywhere they fly, including Costa Rica, Mexico, or Hawaii. Keeping our communities and families connected, one flight at a time. Please join me in welcoming Oriana.
Thank you, James. How's everybody feeling today? So, as James said, I have a special treat for all of you heading into the weekend. Who's ready for a vacation? Raise your hand. Anywhere Alaska Airlines flies, Costa Rica, Mexico, Hawaii. We just won J.D. Power's Best U.S. Airline for the 12th year in a row, and Condé Nast Best Airline for the 2nd year in a row. So I want you to take your hands, reach under your seat. There is a golden ticket hiding under one seat in this room. If you are the winner of that golden ticket, please come to the stage for 2 airline tickets, anywhere Alaska Airlines flies. And I might have a bonus question for the person who comes up for an extra special treat. It's gonna take some time. Yay, come up, come up.
Okay.
All right, our gentleman is coming to the stage. There's an additional question I have for you for an extra treat. All right, what is your name?
My name's Jan Nordmo.
Hi, nice to meet you. Okay, so for a bonus question of a lounge pass to any of our Alaska Airlines lounges, do you know our next lounge opening? What airport are we opening it at? Highest domestic views of any lounge, and it's opening Q2 of 2020.
I'm going to guess San Jose.
It's San Francisco, but hopefully we have plans for San Jose soon. Yeah. Okay, well, here you go. I think we're supposed to take a formal picture somewhere.
Great. And we can do pictures right on the side, or we're doing it right now.
Thank
Oriana
you.
and James, thank you so much. That's round tickets for 2, and I don't know if Oriana mentioned it, but the caveat is you're taking me. Good, glad you knew it. What an honor it is to have someone with us today who has been a leader in industry, a leader in our community, and now a leader for our nation. To introduce this year's Spirit of Silicon Valley Lifetime Achievement Award, we are fortunate to have with us Hatim Tiabe, former chair of the board of Best Buy and CEO of Verifone. And this is how he wanted us to introduce him. CEO, C charming, E energetic, O old man. Please join me in welcoming Hatim Tiabe.
Thank you, Carl. It was a tremendous honor when I was asked to introduce Keith, who I've known for well over 20 years. And at the same time, I wanted to keep my remarks meaningful and perhaps even emotional. So when I talk of Keith, I'm not going to talk about his accomplishments. What I'm going to talk about is the man and why he has been able to achieve what he has been able to achieve. And to do that, I thought the best thing I could do is to quote from Teddy Roosevelt, because this quote epitomizes what Keith is all about. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done better. That is not Keith. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is masked, is marred by dust and sweat and blood. Who at the best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, and while failing, dares greatly, so that his place shall never be among those timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome and celebrate Keith Krach.
You were the youngest vice president in General Motors history. You started Ariba, a pioneer in B2B. What attracted you to DocuSign?
This is one of the biggest markets I've ever seen. Every company, every department in that company, potential customer, every person is a potential user.
Last year, we did about as many successful transactions as we have done life to date in the last 12 years of the company.
There'll always be great innovators around the world.
You know, I think the thing that makes a company strong, the thing that makes a world strong, is that diversity of thought and those different temperaments, talents, and convictions.
We just announced our Invest for Europe initiative. As you mentioned, it's the biggest, boldest initiative ever at DocuSign. It encompassed 3 global acquisitions. We also announced new technology in terms of standard-based signature. So regardless of what country, electronic signature, digital signature, qualified advance, it's that great DocuSign user experience.
And now we have over 100,000 companies that have standardized on DocuSign. We have 50 million unique users, and we're putting over 50,000 unique users on a day. What is core to what we do is all about trust. So that is security, privacy, availability.
We measure our success by our customer success.
That's why we have investors like Microsoft, Intel, Dell, Google, Salesforce, Visa. We just announced Deutsche Telekom.
It is a noble cause. It is a great values-based company. And, you go walking through our offices worldwide, a lot of high fives, a lot of belly laughs, and a lot of fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, our 2019 Spirit of Silicon Valley Lifetime Achievement Award honoree, Keith Krach.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much, Carl. And Hatim, you are amazing, and you model the way, and you always did. Can you imagine, everyone, having a board member like Hatim Giabi? Let's give him a round of applause. I love you, Hatim. Because one thing we do know in Silicon Valley is that it's a team sport. And, you can't do it without people like Carl, who was so instrumental in my Senate confirmation, like Hatim, a great mentor, and like my beautiful family that's over here, my amazing wife, Meta. We have Monica, my biologist daughter. We have Carter, my high-tech entrepreneur. Steve, the rocket scientist, he's down at NASA. But then we have the twins, JD and Emma. And you can dare to be yourself with them. So, a Lifetime Achievement Award for the Spirit of Silicon Valley. First of all, Lifetime Achievement, does that mean like I'm done, I'm finished, kaput? You guys trying to tell me something, I don't know. But maybe it is symbolic for going off into a new chapter in my life and career to work for our nation. And what a great honor that has been. When I was coming in yesterday from Norway, I'm thinking, well, Lifetime Achievement Award, you don't really think about the future, you kind of think about the past a little bit. And my 92-year-old mom says, Keatsy, you can't live in the past, but never forget where you came from. And how blessed to be able to, start off in Cleveland, Ohio at the age of 12, be a welder and work at General Motors, and then come to Silicon Valley, the West Point of capitalism, the United Nations, a total meritocracy, a premium on youth, a place of risk-taking, a place where the only way you can be a failure is not to fail. It's an amazing place. And I'm thinking about, what are the big gifts that Silicon Valley has given me? And it's been so many friendships. And what does it mean? And it's fun going out there and talking to the State Department folks about Silicon Valley. And I would sum up 3 things that really makes this place special. It's, first of all, this is a place where you can make a big difference, a huge difference in terms of a lever. The second, it is the land of give back. As you could see, what Carl was talking about, in the communities, to causes, to the world. And there's, it's where you really see corporate responsibility is social responsibility. And now that I'm running economic diplomacy for the United States, I see another thing, and that is corporate responsibility is also national security, to protect our freedoms and our democracy, because there are a lot of bad guys who want to take it away from us. The third thing is the land to pay it forward. And if you look at great mentors like Hatim, if you look at the genealogy of Silicon Valley, it starts off with Hewlett and Packard, because we've all been mentored. We all have that genealogy. And I'll never forget, I was asked by a reporter in London, hey, do you think we can duplicate Silicon Valley with Silicon Roundabout? And I go, well, this is the crossroads of trade in the world. You've got great technology, financial capital of the world, but no, you can't do it. And here's why. And I'll just tell you a little story about that. One of my other mentors, John Chambers. So I met John right after we took Ariba public. It's worth about $40 billion, and I'm in my late 30s. And all of a sudden I get this call. Keith, this is John Chambers. We have a great honor to go to Telefonica in Madrid, Spain, and present their board of directors. Would you like to have a ride in my private aircraft with me? Now, you can't come back because I got other things to do, and don't feel bad if I don't talk to you and stuff during the flight. Well, anyway, by the time we got back off that flight, he said, Keith, why don't we get together once a month? And you can ask me any question you want. Ones you can't ask your family, you can't ask your board, you can't ask your executive team. You just ask me any question you want. And I did. And about a year into it, I come in, have a breakfast. He goes, Keith, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. I go, John, what am I thinking? He goes, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? I go, as a matter of fact, I was thinking about that. And he goes, I'll tell you why. You see, when I came out to Silicon Valley from Boston and Wang, I didn't know stuff from Shinola. And you see, somebody did it for me, God bless his soul. His name was Lou Platt. And I remember asking him, Lou, why you do this for me? He said, well, you see, somebody did this for me. And he keeps, so I don't ask for anything in return. I just ask you to do it for somebody else. And Keith, that is the magic of Silicon Valley. And it really is. So I will cherish this Lifetime Achievement Award for the rest of my lifetime. And it's really because of all you great leaders, all you great mentors, that makes this honor so great. So I thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. God bless Silicon Valley, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Keith. That was fantastic. Keith, there really is a Lifetime Achievement Award with the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. As Keith takes his seat for our fireside chat, he just flew in from Norway last night to join us, where he announced a $1.2 billion U.S. State Department initiative to support the blue economy, a series of programs that will strengthen the sustainability of the ocean economy, enhance the health of our planet, and advance global economic security. This is especially gratifying with our focus on environmental stewardship. We're now going to ask SunPower CEO Tom Werner to introduce the moderator of our keynote conversation with Keith. Tom?
So when I realized I was going to have a short speaking role, I said, God, don't leave me after Keith. That's going to be such a tough compare, so don't compare, please. And actually, I'm positioned between two excellent speakers. Imagine if your moderator was an Emmy award-winning business anchor. Imagine if your moderator was the #1 woman anchor in America. Imagine if your moderator was an entrepreneur, just like us. She's actually from New York, and 8 years ago took on CNBC. She left CNBC to go to Fox and to say, okay, we're going to overtake Fox. And in 8 years, she crushed CNBC. So it's super impressive what she's done. And what you failed to answer the previous speakers when they said, what's your favorite TV show? The answer is obviously the Clayman Countdown. It's 3 o'clock on Fox Business, 12 o'clock here. And the last thing I'd say about Liz is she's a rather incredible athlete. She's an avid Peloton rider, and she has certain things she likes to ride. She likes to ride on Sundays to the NFL show and rides for an hour, which is super hard. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with Liz and Keith, and I'm going to get out of the way. So Liz, they're all yours.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate being here. And Keith, thank you for being here. Okay, we've been seeing everybody's kids' pictures, right? Can we just say that Sam Liccardo's was the cutest? I mean, I'm sorry. I've been keeping a tally because I'm like that.
We knew you were going to be gorgeous at that age.
Yeah, red hair, freckles, braces twice. Thank you very much. First, I just want to say, and I think you would agree, Carl Guardino. Oh my gosh, David would be so proud, right?
He's the best.
That was amazing. And this is a huge honor for me. I mean, me, a girl who grew up on a small farm in Beverly Hills. I am a California girl, so I'm absolutely thrilled to be back, and particularly to be here to talk to Keith. Undersecretary, Mr. Undersecretary, congratulations. We saw from, obviously, your intro and the piece there on video, you have a very interesting background. Of course, working in your father's machine shop. He had about 5 employees, and I don't know if you guys know this, but his father, in good times, things were going wonderfully. In bad times, it would break his heart. He would have to go down to 1 employee, and that employee was Keith. And you were 12 when you were learning how to weld, et cetera. But can you give me a sense, growing up in Ohio, what did you glean that brought you, if you could pick 1 or 2 things, the characteristics that you learned working with your father that brought you to where you are on this stage today?
Well, yeah, I think the first one I would say would be work ethic. And, you know, I remember taking out the scrap metal out of the factory and all of that. And by the way, also a sense of humor, because he was a funny guy. And he would just like pat me on the back, and then he goes, Keith, we don't make a lot of money, but we sure have a lot of fun. You know, or he'd say, we can't solve world peace, but we can only try. But I also remember too, once I was, when we were driving into the factory early one morning, and everybody loved my dad, and I go, Dad, just everybody loves you. You know, tell me why. So he just pulls over in a parking lot, puts on his brake, and he was kind of a good German guy, and he goes, Keith, when you're with the Pope, you pray. When you're with a drunkard, you drink. Anything in between goes, but always be yourself. And so, which is his way of saying, have range, celebrate diversity of thought, because it is the catalyst for genius, but always maintain your integrity. At least that's what I took from it.
Absolutely. You have a very motivated crowd here who are dying to know the genetics of what, in essence, was the DNA of that it factor that brought you to, by the way, being the youngest, as you guys heard, vice president in General Motors history. So I just want to touch quickly upon General Motors. How did you do that? What was it about you? What characteristic did you have at GM? Was it your creative thinking or your ability to read management that got you at such a young age of 26 to be in that high position at such a big American company?
Well, I think it's like anything else in life, Liz. What matters most is what you do when nobody's looking. You know, they put me through Purdue Engineering and Business School, and I got a chance to work in the New York Treasurer's office for a while. I also got a chance to work on the factory floor, second shift chassis line, Cadillac, and I think it was really that range of opportunities really taught me a lot. So when I finished business school, I had a passion for the robotics business, and somehow I managed to get my way in front of the board of directors, and I said, General Motors needs to get in the robotics business. And this is back in the early 80s. This is going to be huge. And all of a sudden the board goes, and it's back when Roger Smith was CEO, he goes, okay, how do we do it? I go, can I come back to the next board meeting? I came because we had...
Is that like Liz Warren? How are you going to pay for it? Let me get back to you.
Exactly. And we had the most sophisticated robot technology back at the GM research labs back in those days. So I came back a month later, and I said, we got to do it with in a joint venture because we need a wide product line. And they go, well, who should we joint venture with? I go, well, Fanuc of Japan, because they own about 70% of the NC controller business. That's the brains of the robot. And these guys go, because they're all, you know, World War II veterans. And they go, the Japanese? I go, yes. And so they cut me loose. So I called up the CEO of Fanuc, and I said, hey, this is Keith Krach from General Motors. We would like to do a joint venture with you in the robotics business. Can you be here in 2 days? Because I can be there. Came with 11 of his lieutenants, comes into the manufacturing staff headquarters, and he's looking around for the guy, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's me. And so I go, yes, we'd like to do a 5149 joint venture. And he goes, how many 5149 joint ventures do you know that work? And I actually was honest. I said, none, because I hadn't really done any joint ventures, so I really didn't know. And he said, okay, let's do it 50-50. We grew it, and now it's the largest manufacturer of industrial robots in the world.
But very nice, and very easily he jumped over the part where somehow I got in front of the board. Please explain to this crowd how you did that, Keith. I mean, there are people here who are maybe middle management or working their way up the ladder on the lower ranks. You said do the best when nobody's looking. I mean, do you think that they were looking and they noticed and therefore they did give you that shot?
Well, I think a lot of it is, before you go into, it could be whether it's a board meeting, it could be whether you're lobbying the Hill. It's really what you do in prep of that and preparing everybody for that.
Well, you broadened the aperture. You took what you did at General Motors and you brought it to, as you mentioned, robotics, factory automation, engineering, commerce. It's unbelievable. Philanthropy, even the way people sign. Of course, at DocuSign. I mean, it's quite the colorful mosaic here. And if you look at the teamwork aspect of it, you were quite brilliant at cobbling together winning teams. Are there certain parameters that you definitely look for, certain brass rings you've got to touch and grab before you can cobble together a winning team? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think there's really three key things, because when you're a CEO, your number one job is to build a high-performance team. So the first thing is the organization with the best people wins. So I would always spend, especially in the early days, 50 to 60% of my time recruiting. And, as you start building more companies, a lot of the folks follow you, and you spread out that network. The second thing is get everybody working together as a team. And you really need three things. One is you need a noble cause, right? Whether it's, changing the way business is done, accelerating commerce, whatever that may be. And then you also need an enemy, because that stops the water cooler talk. Now, at DocuSign, we made up the enemy. It was paper. It was a great one because there was a lot of it and didn't punch back. And then the third thing you need is a plan. In other words, you got to set a crystal clear direction. And in all the companies we built, and I've had a guy, we've been in 10 organizations together who's now with me at the State Department, a guy named Mark Carlson. We use the same playbook every time. The playbook is vision, mission, values, team rules, long-term goals, strategy, all boiled down to execution. And it's actually the same framework that we're implementing at the State Department for the development of the global economic security strategy.
Well, it's not a surprise that Keith was unanimously confirmed by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. That is a tall order, especially with the temperature gauge in Washington, D.C. right now is really unfortunate. And that indicates to me that everybody looked at you and said, this is definitely the guy for this job. Okay, this job. You have done extremely well in Silicon Valley. You've really enjoyed your philanthropic endeavors. Why jump into what everybody says is a scorpion jar in Washington, D.C. right now? Isn't that a lovely image? Yet you were asked and you said, I'll do it. What kind of soul searching did you do in advance of accepting the nomination?
Well, not a heck of a lot, to be honest with you. I headed out there because, I was out in Asia looking at expanding it into the only major country we hadn't been at yet, and I'd seen a lot of things that really disturbed me. So I headed out to Washington, and I ended up in a senior official's office, and said, hey, aren't you running some little software company now? I go, yeah. And he goes, how's it doing? I go, well, we just took it public a month ago. It's worth about $10 billion. And he just fell on the ground laughing for some reason. But I said, hey, look, I'm going to be leaving in a year. And he goes, have you ever thought about serving your country? And I just said, that's a dream I never knew I had. I'd be honored. And he goes, can you move? And I just go, I can move anywhere in the world. Now, that's the first one. I didn't consult my wife, Meta. Sorry about that. I've been blessed with the American dream. And so it is a privilege to pay back this great nation that has been so great to my family and to me. And it has been the most interesting thing I've ever done in my life.
I want to take that step by step. There are other components to this position. By the way, it's called VE, right? They shorten it because you are the Undersecretary of Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. Major spinning plates right now that you would have to all keep up in the air. So you arrive in DC. What were some of the aha moments? You know, you're unpacking in your office.
Yeah.
Government is a lot different from startups or big Silicon Valley companies like Ariba and DocuSign.
Yeah. I think one of the big ones is, and it was a whirlwind, right? Got confirmed on a Thursday, sworn in on a Friday, off to Prosperity and Peace to Bahrain for meet with all the Middle Eastern leaders, on to Osaka for the G20, and then on to Korea's. I didn't go as far north as the president, but pretty close. And came back on that Sunday night, and I'm going, wow, that was an interesting first week. I wonder what we're going to do next week. And that's when I sat down with the secretary to give me the charge to develop a proactive, integrated strategic plan that combats economic aggression to maximize national security and advance peace and prosperity for everyone in the world. So I think one of the big ahas is that the most important purpose of the federal government is national security, because this democracy that we enjoy, it's a 200-year experiment, a blip in time, and it is an unnatural act. Our freedoms are against all the laws and physics if you look at history, and we've got to constantly protect that, because there are a lot of bad folks out there. And we got to protect it, not just for us, but we're a beacon of light for all these other nations. So that was a big aha. Just how important that singular focus is. The other one is a lot of people go, hey, so what's it like working out there at the State Department? Oh, those guys out there. And I go, I will tell you one thing. These are the smartest people I've ever worked with. They can speak 3 to 7 languages. They'll go get their master's at foreign policy, Georgetown, PhD, Oxford. They work their tail off. I told some of the guys, they make you guys look lazy. They're mission driven, and they rotate every 3 years country. They have to take a dangerous assignment. And I said, just like when you see a military person or somebody who served in the service, you thank them for their service. And I can tell you, if you see a career foreign service officer or civil servant, thank them for their service, because they make a tremendous sacrifice, and they make a small fraction of what they could make in the private sector, and that is really a team sport. I admire our foreign service officers so much. It's an honor to serve by their side.
It is really good to hear you say that. You also said that the United States is a beacon of light to follow for other nations. The third E in your job is environment, and I'm not sure that a lot of smart people in this room would think that right now we are a beacon. Since 2017, the White House has either cut or eliminated regulation on everything from methane and greenhouse gas emission, coal-powered plants, offshore drilling, habitat protection, logging, endangered species, clean water. Okay, I get a little hyper about the clean water thing. I have children. You do too. Mm-hmm. We're concerned about this. Knowing that the White House has cut all of these regulations or eliminated some of them, the president has not shown, and I'm going to say this nicely, much interest in climate change and trying to help tackle it. How do you convince the world that we are, the beacon to follow as we're diminishing these regulations?
Well, I think one thing, and if you look at what my remit is with the 3 E's, it is to optimize economic growth, energy security, and the health of the planet to maximize national security and to advance the interests of the American people, right? So it's an optimization equation. A lot of people don't really understand how important energy security is. That's critical. And the health of the planet, right? So, and economic security is national security. So what we look at is the results. So for example, since 2005, Our GDP has grown 19%. Carbon emissions have reduced 13%. There's no other country on the planet that can match that level. The other key thing for me in this area, it all comes down to innovation, because that is what is, that's the key to that optimization equation. And the United States leads in clean tech. We have to make sure we continue to lead in clean tech. We lead in efficiency. We have to make sure that we do that. So it's really a balance of those. And that industry is key, because that's going to be as big as software and computers in the future. So if you think about growing, whether it's growing GDP or exports, all those kind of things. So, and you know, I came back from Norway. I announced that the United States committed $1.2 billion to our blue economy.
Clean oceans.
Yes.
We've got so much plastic in the oceans, and I'm just wondering if you have in that brain of yours that Silicon Valley can do, we'll figure out a way. What do we do about that?
Well, you've got to team up. So, you know, growing up in Cleveland, when I was a kid, we couldn't swim in Lake Erie. Matter of fact, my mom forbid us. We kind of snuck in a couple times, and you really couldn't eat the fish.
Yeah.
Now, Lake Erie is the best freshwater fishing in North America. And what that really told me is, yes, you can affect things like that. And the way it was really done was, first of all, good science behind it, but also really good management, and also public and private partnerships, right? To get the glass guys in Toledo, the car manufacturers in Detroit, the steel companies, in Cleveland, working together. So that's why, by the mere fact of all of you being here, you are now virtual adopted members of the E. Okay, so that I'm known in the federal government as the E. If anybody asks you, E stands for excellence. So we need all of you on so many different fronts, whether it is the environment, whether it is innovating in clean tech, and by the way, and also in terms of combating economic aggression and national security. And I really do believe corporate responsibility is global economic security.
And you've proven that at many of your companies that you've worked with, that you really focus on that. You mentioned that the emissions have gone down since 2005. Would you agree that so much of that has had to do with the fact that we have kept sort of aiming higher? You know, the poet says a man's reach or a woman's reach should exceed its grasp, or what's a heaven for? We have, especially in the state of California, tried to reach further than we know what we can grasp, whether it's the CAFE standards or the emissions, and clearly that has worked. But the administration obviously wants to roll that back. I mean, you may find yourself in a difficult position. I'm thrilled that you are there, because it seems like you are on board with this. On top of it, I also think, too, that you do have that moral and ethic aspect about you. So if somebody comes to you and says, well, that's not really where we're going right now, it can't be a surprise. They've been very clear about that, particularly the president, pushing for coal, which is last millennium's energy. You know, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I think to focus on solving the problem, and by the way, there's multiple ways to attack that. And you can see what has happened to our economy. Historic unemployment rates, growth rates no one ever even thought was possible. I don't think a lot of that comes by accident. But here again, you know, this is a complex issue. We all want a healthy environment for our children. And President Trump signed a year ago a Save the Seas Act. So, you know, we're all in this thing together. And I've got a tremendous team that is a great assistant secretary for oceans, environment, and science, some of the best scientists in the world. So it has continued to
figure those solutions out in the future.
We have such an influential group of people, and we've got a couple of minutes left. 1,300 leaders of some of the most powerful and important and upcoming companies here, obviously, in Silicon Valley. What can we do in the end, in your opinion, to advance economic leadership? Because so much of it comes from right here in the Valley.
Yeah. It really does. I mean, Silicon Valley, the tech business, the innovation economy is the driver for the overall economy. And on one hand, it's in a little bit of a squeeze play because you have China with forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft. You also have Europeans who are exclusively targeting our tech firms. And I think everybody here understands that. I think one thing when it comes to economic aggression, we have, the reality we face as a nation is intense cyber warfare and seemingly ceaseless variations of economic competition, perhaps economic warfare. And, you know, our rivals are playing the long game. They're playing for keeps. They're playing a four-dimensional game of military, diplomatic, economic, cultural chess. But they believe they're above the rules. So I think a big thing is to speak out. And you could see what happened in the NBA with a 7-word tweet and the retaliation that happened. That goes on all the time in Silicon Valley. And so I think there is unity, or I think there is power and strength in unity and solidarity. And I would applaud to that. And it looks like times are up, but on this one, this is where we have to unify. And this is where we need solidarity, is in combating that economic aggression.
Congratulations, and we are thrilled that someone like you is now there in this position. Mr. Undersecretary, let's give it up for Keith Krach.
Thank you, Liz, I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Business excellence, community engagement, impeccable ethics. Our 3 E's that match the 3 E's of your assignment. We're honored that you're here and you're serving our nation. Would you mind staying right here on stage for a moment? And Liz Clayman, are we fortunate that she flew out from New York? If you don't watch her show, you're missing a daily education on our economy and the market. An amazing, objective interviewer.
Thank you, Carl, very much.
We are going to end in 4 minutes. You have 4 minutes to win 2 prizes. 4 minutes, 2 prizes, come on out. We have Vice Mayor of the City of San Jose, Charles Chappie Jones. We have Kim Delavet with Southwest Airlines. Look at Chappie. Is that the best picture in the world? Kim Delavet, you come out. Our friends from Specialized, you come on out. Charles, it's yours.
All right. Actually, I'm thinking about growing that afro back. What do you think? Starting with its inaugural AMA flight between San Jose and Tokyo on January 11th, 2014, the Silicon Valley Leadership Group has been an integral partner in the efforts of the City of San Jose and San Jose Airport to grow our service with international flights, better serving the world's innovation hub of San Jose and Silicon Valley. Whether traveling domestic or international, San Jose International Airport has the 2nd best on-time arrival record in the United States. Yeah, that's right. Today, you may not be taking a flight, but join us for a flight of fancy as Southwest Airlines joins me on stage for a drawing for 2 round-trip tickets anywhere they fly. Today's drawing is in support of Reading Partners and the book drive that many of us participate in today by bringing a new children's book for the Reading Partners tutoring program that has served thousands of students throughout the Bay Area.
Southwest is pleased to be conducting a book drive again with Reading Partners, and we appreciate Silicon Valley Leadership Group for making it easy for folks to order books through Amazon before and even at the event today. Reading Partners was founded in Silicon Valley 20 years ago, and since then, Reading Partners has been successfully providing volunteer-led, one-on-one literacy tutoring K-5 students in 4 counties across Silicon Valley. And 81% of all Reading Partner students are meeting or exceeding their primary end-of-year literacy growth goal. Last year, over 500 books were collected at the luncheon, so thank you. And thank you for supporting literacy in our kids. To help reward your efforts today, we're conducting a drawing for round-trip travel for 2 to over 100 destinations that we fly, including Honolulu and Maui. So, and we're excited to start nonstop service from San Jose to Lahui, Kauai, and Kona on the island of Hawaii starting March 7th. Yay! Additionally, the winner will win A-list priority boarding for a year. So, are you ready? Let's see. The winner does not have to be present, so, but I hope you are. The lucky winner is 583333. Again, that's 583333. So thank you all for your support. Are we here? Anyone? All right, well, I'll give this to Carl. And thank you for supporting Southwest.
Have you done any press yet?
And how many of us believe that 2 wheels is actually twice as good as 4 wheels? Our friends at the Outright Foundation and Specialized Bikes, best bike maker in the world, are going to be drawing off a bike.
Hey, thank you, Carl. I just want to start by saying a huge thank you to Silicon Valley Leadership Group, all our member companies, and all the runners out there who made the Heart and Souls race a huge success. If you didn't know, we are one of the beneficiaries of that race, and we were able to turn on another middle school with the Riding for Focus program here in Santa Clara County, South Valley Middle School down in Gilroy, where we're going to have those students join the 33,000 other students who are being introduced to cycling during the school day, during physical education curricula. My name is David Wood. I'm the Senior Director for Outride. We are formerly the Specialized Foundation. And over the past 5 years, we've done research to prove that cycling does benefit our youth and that they can enjoy social, emotional, and cognitive benefits from riding a bike during the school day. It'll translate into academic health and social success. This year does represent our 4th year partnering with Silicon Valley Leadership Group and bringing those cycling programs to those that need it most here in our backyard in Santa Clara County. This time I want to introduce Marcus Granberry, a colleague of mine from Specialized Bicycle Components, who's part of our advocacy and finance team, who's going to be announcing our winner for this awesome bike right here. Don't be concerned if it looks too small, too big. We'll get the exact one that fits you. But if this fits you, then you can ride it on out of here. So, our first recipient from a random drawing was, apologize for the butchering, Deanna Shipman. Are you here? You do have to be here, by the way.
Oh.
And we did have an alternate, though. Don't worry. We drew Isabel LaSalle. And if not, our last and final one was Jason Black from KQED. Okay, we'll be reaching out to any of those folks and making sure they get their bike. Thank you.
Southwest and Specialized, thank you. But I want to thank once again Keith Krach for your incredible leadership for our nation and our world, Liz Clayman for the objective coverage that you do on the business side every day. Here is our departing message, knowing that I owe you 9 minutes back of your lives. Our departing message is going to appear on the screen. Let's go out and make a positive impact. Thank you all for joining us today.